Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we'll be reading from the 8th canto, chapter 1, about the dynasties of Manu. You may be curious why this chapter. First of all, you may be surprised that Pritchett Maharaj wants to hear about the Manus, the system of universal government. And remember, Pritchett Maharaj is in his last 7 days. Yet he takes delight in hearing about the administration, the universal administration of the Manus, who are all serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead by administering the universe. Some of you may know, in every day of Brahma, every 24 hours of Brahma, which is 8,640,000,000 years, there are 14 Manus. Each Manu has a lifespan of 71 Divya Yugas. That means the 4 Yugas. Satya, Treta, Dwapara, Kali. 71 revolvings of the 4 Yugas. So Pritchett Maharaj is saying, I've already heard about some of the Manus. You know in Bhagavad Gita what does Krishna say? Imam vavasute yogam proktavan aham avyam. He describes how he spoke Bhagavad Gita many millions of years ago. So this is something we cannot avoid about the Bhakti wisdom, about Bhagavad Gita, about Srimad Bhagavatam. How far back in time can you trace it? Far, far beyond the calculations of the puny human beings of today. Why would Pritchett Maharaj in his last 7 days of life want to hear about something mythological? Something that is just a fantasy, aboriginal fantasy. No, he knew that hearing about the Manus is very important because they are the cosmic administrators. And it's amazing, and we'll talk about this more, how people today think there's no cosmic administration. There's no meaning to the universe. Make your own meaning. Shine your own light in the complete darkness of the remote, cold universe. So it's very helpful for us to hear about the Manus. So we'll start with text 7, which describes Swayambhuva Manu and his wife. I thought it was important to note that both Swayambhuva Manu and his wife were performing austerities. And then we'll eventually, probably tomorrow, get to the prayers by Swayambhuva Manu as he's performing austerities. You can just think, the administrator of the universe performing austerities, shouldn't he be enjoying? And that's all? If you're the boss of the whole universe, making the laws for the whole universe, shouldn't you just be enjoying? You got such power, such control. But we find that these Manus are all great devotees, in spite of their power. Virakta kama bhogeshu Shatarupa pati prabhu Visrijya rajam tapase Sabayo vanam avishat Virakta kama bhogeshu Shatarupa pati prabhu Visrijya rajam tapase Sabaryo vanam avishat Virakta kama bhogeshu Shatarupa pati prabhu Visrijya rajam tapase Sabaryo vanam avishat Vaishnavis. Virakta, without attachment. Kama bhogeshu, in sense gratification. In grihastha life. Shatarupa pati, the husband of Shatarupa, namely Swayambhuva Manu. Prabhu, who was the master or king of the world. Vishrija, after renouncing totally. Rajam, his kingdom. Tapase, for practicing austerities. Sabharya, with his wife. Vanam, the forest. Avishat, entered. Translation. Swayambhuva Manu, the husband of Shatarupa, was by nature not at all attached to enjoyment of the senses. Thus he gave up his kingdom of sense enjoyment and entered the forest with his wife to practice austerities. Purport. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Evam parampara praptam imam rajasayo vidu. The supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession. and the saintly kings understood it in that way. All the Manus were perfect kings. They were Rajarshis. In other words, although they held posts as kings of the world, they were as good as great saints. Swayambhuva Manu, for example, was the emperor of the world, yet he had no desire for sense gratification. This is the meaning of monarchy. The king of the country, or the emperor of the empire, must be so trained that by nature he renounces sense gratification. It is not that because one becomes king, he should unnecessarily spend money for sense gratification. As soon as kings became degraded, spending money for sense gratification, they were lost. Similarly, at the present moment, monarchy having been lost, people have created democracy, which is also failing. Now, by the laws of nature, the time is coming when dictatorship will put the citizens into more and more difficulty. If the king or dictator individually or the members of the government collectively cannot maintain the state or kingdom according to the rules of Manu Samhita, certainly their government will not endure. Translation again. Swayambhuva Manu, the husband of Shatarupa, was by nature not at all attached to enjoyment of the senses. Thus he gave up his kingdom of sense enjoyment and entered the forest with his wife to practice austerities. Om Jnana-Timirandasya Jnana Shalakaya Chakshurudhikamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We should always remember when we're hearing Srimad Bhagavatam that we are in the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Just as when we chant Hare Krishna, we are associating with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Lord Chaitanya's instruction, who is Krishna himself in the role of the perfect devotee, instructed that before you are liberated, hear Srimad Bhagavatam, and after you are liberated, go on hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. The glorification of Krishna is eternal. That is our eternal activity. And as we start to regain our spiritual health, we'll notice increased attraction for hearing and chanting about Krishna. We can't get enough of that. Just like Rupa Goswami describes in his famous verse, that when he chants Hare Krishna, he wishes he had thousands upon thousands of tongues, thousands upon thousands of ears. So that is the advanced stage, the liberated stage of chanting Hare Krishna. And here we are in a gathering hearing Srimad Bhagavatam spoken by Shukadeva Goswami in response to questions by Parikshit Maharaj. We should never forget the rarity of our situation. After countless lifetimes of doing so much nonsense in so many different bodies on so many different planets and regions, here we are, and we get to hear Srimad Bhagavatam and chant Hare Krishna. Of course, we can be attacked by forgetfulness. That's one of the symptoms of material existence. The first principle is reversal. Instead of your understanding your identity as spirit soul, you think you are the body and mind. And then based on that reversal, you implicate yourself in material existence. In other words, the whole problem is unnecessary. The whole problem is artificial. But we willingly embrace a struggle, a burden, because we have this false vision, we have this hallucination that the world is ours and we are its enjoyer. So the process of sadhana bhakti is to decontaminate us, so we get over it. Maybe at some point in your life you had some occurrence that haunted you, traumatized you, and someone just told you, look, when are you going to get over it? Similarly, when are we going to get over trying to be lords of the material nature? Thinking, this world is mine. It owes me something. It owes me happiness. It owes me gratification. My time has come to enjoy. And as we always point out, as soon as you want to enjoy, you have to, what? Control. So between your attempts to control, which are false, and your attempts to enjoy, which are false, you get yourself into a lot of trouble. What is that trouble known as? Material existence. So in this way, in the name of happiness and economic development, we increase the pages of history. Same old problem, same old syndrome again and again and again. So this forgetfulness of our original identity can be cured by hearing the Hare Krishna mantra, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. As soon as we stop doing that, we're overpowered by the material energy. And within us is implanted so many hallucinations. I will be happy in this way. I will be happy in that way. Let me surround myself with, you know what Shukadeva Goswami calls the fallible soldiers. Deha patra kalatradisha apasanyesha satsupi tesham pramato nidanam upon. What's the last one? Pashanapi na pashyati. You're so experienced already. Countless births and deaths in so many bodies on so many planets. You're so experienced, but you still don't see what's going on. Especially because we lack the big picture. And this is what Pritchard Maharaj is trying to give you in this chapter. First chapter of the 8th canto. Let's look at the big picture. Just like you have mayors and governors and prime ministers and the like presidents, similarly they're manus. You may say, well, I don't see any manus. It's like a little 4-year-old child saying, I don't see any prime minister. It's out of your range. That doesn't mean they don't exist. It's out of your range of perception. So this thinking that the universe is a cold, dark, meaningless place gives you the false sense of empowerment. It's up to me to create my own meaning. And as we were pointing out to the people last Sunday at the Soul Feast, this is hard work. Defining yourself, validating yourself, it seems so liberating and fun at first. I'll chart my own course, I'll be my own person. And as I always point out, as soon as you say like that, you can be sure you're imitating someone else. I'm going to be authentic and true to me. I'm doing me. You end up just doing what everyone else is doing. Because there are not many options in material life. You have to enjoy your senses this way, enjoy your senses that way. Very limited possibilities. So you have to do the same thing in different places. And you think, oh, now life is better. You have your senses. With those senses, you try to enjoy material nature. And to add variety, you just change the circumstances. Change the cup that's holding the water from gold to tin to plastic to paper. But the taste is the same. The taste of the water is the same. But people will pat you on the back. Oh, you're drinking out of a silver cup. But the person drinking out of the silver cup is getting the same taste of water or whatever they're drinking as if they're drinking out of a paper cup. But it's in the mind. The mind tells you this is better. So in this way, we change situation after situation, chopping and changing, hoping that the flavor will be better in the new situation, when actually it's the same old same thing. So if you're smart enough to figure this out, with the help of Srimad Bhagavatam, you save yourself so much trouble. So this is why Pritchett Maharaj wants to hear about the Manus. The Manus know the purpose of the cosmos. They lay down the laws, which if you don't follow, you get punya. No, papa, bad karma. If you follow, you get punya, pious karma, good karma. If you don't, you get papa, sinful karma. So Pritchett Maharaj is very happy to hear about the Manus. He knows there's a system. So Bhagavatam is taking you beyond the current stunted, very tiny understanding of our surroundings that's so prevalent today. It's giving you a complete perspective of the universe which is beyond current perception. What to speak of it giving you a complete perception of the spiritual world. So why do we have the material world? We have the material world because of the limited, infinitesimal desires of the conditioned soul. It's a place of limitation because as tiny particles of Krishna, our desiring capacity is limited. So the material world is the kingdom, so to speak, it's the land of limited desire. Everywhere you turn, there's limitation. You get something good, right? It's limited. I'm going to get so much of this unlimitedly. You can't. There'll be a limitation to wealth, a limitation to health, limitation to so-called love, limitation to family. Your lifespan is limited. So you're constantly up against the wall of limitation. But still we valiantly try to squeeze some material happiness out of such a limited, constricted situation. So this is why the Manus have principles for living. And this is why Pritchett Maharaj wants to hear about the Manus. Immediately you understand by hearing about the Manus that there's a purpose, an inherent purpose to the universe. And that means there's an inherent essential purpose to your life. It's very dangerous and unrewarding, unhealthy to be unaware of your context. Just imagine a little 3-year-old or 4-year-old kid wandering around in central Wellington alone. The child has no idea of his or her context. And everyone knows this is very dangerous. Anything can happen at any moment. Strangers can drive up in a car. Hey kid, you want some candy? Get in the car. Isn't that one of the things parents teach their children? Tara and Rita, don't get into cars with strangers who offer you candy. It's the classic situation for exploiting children. It's been going on for decades. Offer a lolly, get in the car. The kid has no idea of the context that he's living in. Similarly, here we are in the universe with no idea of our context. And so naturally, or unnaturally, what do we think? Well, no one's in charge here. No rules, make my own rules, play the game my own way, try to be happy according to my own ideas. And what are those ideas? You end up doing the same old thing again and again and again. So Maya imparts a false sense of freshness. This time it's different. It's the same thing. As Prahlad Maharaj says, Puna Punas Charvana Charvanana. Chewing that which has already been chewed. Why waste your life in that way? So Swayambhuva Manu and his wife Shatarupa they're at the top of the ability pyramid in the universe. They're not ordinary entities. So they're performing austerities. He's given up his post as the Manu, and he's going to the forest with his wife to practice austerities. So you think, who would want to give up the power and opulence that he has, that she has? Who wants to give that up? But even Manu, with all that power, all that opulence, all that longevity, understands existence in the material realm is temporary. You have to keep your eyes on the real goal, which is how to go back to Krishna. We lose track of this goal so easily. That's why we need the association of devotees. We're prone to forget. We're prone to prioritize our life in the wrong way. Let's face it. We have that tendency. Because the very nature of material existence is apohana, forgetfulness. And the more you suffer from that reversal, instead of thinking I am spirit soul, part of the Supreme Soul, we think I am the body and mind. The more you act on being the body and mind, what happens? The more attached to illusion you become. So you might think, well, all right, I think I'm the body and mind, so what? This person thinks like this, that person thinks like that. What's the problem? But when you act materially, attachment accrues. It's not that you get away scot-free. It looks like that, doesn't it? Well, you're doing this, I'm doing that. You've got your belief system, I've got mine. It's all whatever you want to do. But no, the more you entangle yourself in material nature, the more attached you become. The more attached you become, the more frustrated and angry you become when your plans, your hopes, your endeavors hit a brick wall, which they must. So material nature teaches a very hard lesson. How many times do we have to learn it? That's up to each individual to decide. So Swayambhuva Manu, the husband of Shatarupa, wasn't attached to all his facilities for power and control on a cosmic scale. Evidently his wife wasn't attached either, because they both entered the forest to practice austerities. People don't even know today what austerities, what does that word mean? How many of you, when you first were reading Prabhupada's books, came across the word austerities? Sounds strange, doesn't it? Austerities. What would you think of when someone said austerity? What? Walking down the street in Wellington with the wind blowing? That's about as much austerity as you can think of. What else? How many of you could click on that word, austerity, when you first read it? It reminds me of years ago at the Loft in Auckland, when the Loft was on Broadway, Newmarket, and one class of young people, high school students, secondary school students, they came en masse to the Loft. And so we had to address them, 14, 15, 16-year-olds. So we asked them, have you ever heard this word austerity? Austerity. What's that? And then I asked her, how many of you know the word chaste? Someone said, I know what the word chaste means. It means you're running and someone's running after you. Chaste, you're chaste. That's about as deep as it got. So Bhagavatam sounds exotic to us because we live in a jungle, basically. We have a false understanding of civilization. You can tell that by the way human beings, they eat, the way they sleep, the way they mate, the way they defend themselves. They have a false understanding of civilization. So this false understanding of civilization is what the Bhagavatam is uprooting. So that's why in the beginning of Bhagavatam, Prabhupada writes that it's a program for re-spiritualization of the entire human society. That's Srimad Bhagavatam. It's not knuckling under it's not being co-opted, it's not surrendering to delusions of today or yesterday or tomorrow. It's cutting straight through to core reality. So therefore you see Swayambhuva Manu and his wife, they enter the forest to practice austerities. They've done their dash in terms of being involved with external affairs. In Vedic times, kings would maintain forests just for vanaprasthas. That's where the word vanaprastha comes from. Obviously, it doesn't happen today. You couldn't just say to your partner, okay, it's time for us to retire. We're going up the hill in Mount Vic or something. But we should hear about Swayambhuva Manu and Shatarupa because that is real human civilization. And by the more we hear Bhagavatam, the more our sensibilities, our insight, our vision changes. When you stop hearing it, you're covered over. You lose your spiritual values, you lose your spiritual vision. Actually, Bhagavatam tells you that even before someone like Swayambhuva would take up their post, whether as emperor of the world, emperor of a section of the world, emperor of the universe, they would practice austerities first. Remember Daksha in the 6th canto? He sent all his sons to perform austerities for thousands of years before they would take up their roles as rulers. First, austerity. Learn how to control your mind and senses. How to be a paka grihasta. Daksha had no intention that his sons would become renunciates. Still, he understood. First, austerity. That'll empower you with mind and sense control. Totally unlike, totally reverse of what people think today. Parents have no idea today how to raise their children to be self-controlled. Daksha understood that. Okay, my sons, off you go. I want you to become qualified to take up my responsibilities. That means you need to control your mind and senses. Go practice austerities. And you know what happened? Narada Muni came along and converted them all into renunciates. Daksha wasn't perturbed, right? He said, all right, that's why his name is Daksha. It means expert at procreation. He could have batches of children at once. All right, Narada Muni converted all my sons that I sent for austerities. He converted them into renunciates because Narada Muni told the boys, what are you going through all these austerities just to try and enjoy material life? Why are you going through all these austerities just to have power and control and opulence? And so they all became renunciates. Daksha wasn't perturbed. All right, I lost all my sons to Narada Muni's purposes. They're all renunciates. I'll just have another batch of sons. So he had another batch of sons, and again, because he knows how to live material life, he sent the second batch of sons off to perform austerities. And what happened again? Narada Muni comes along, and he tells the second batch of Daksha's sons, don't you know you're supposed to follow the example of your older brothers? That was Narada Muni's preaching tactic. Your older brothers have done like this. You should follow in their footsteps. So again, second batch became renunciates. This time, Daksha was enraged. And you can read about that in the 6th canto. He was furious. So furious he cursed Narada Muni with something that Narada Muni took as a blessing. I curse you that you'll never be able to stay in one place. So Srila Prabhupada wrote in the purport that the parents of his Western devotees have also cursed him in the same way. And he's now passing that curse down to his disciples. So, in case you wonder why I'm still traveling so intensely, I've inherited the curse. It seems Daksha had a point, didn't he? He told Narada Muni, don't you know that you cannot be ready and equipped for renunciation until first you enjoy? First you got to get into it. Get into material enjoyment, and then you walk away from it. Sounds like it makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah. Gotta get it out of your system. It is not necessary, though. Bhagavatam is giving you the shortcut, how to learn by hearing. So Narada Muni did the right thing. He had equipped those boys with knowledge. But Daksha didn't appreciate that. Daksha just thought you did some maneuvers on them. Innocent boys. And you got them to be renunciants. Whereas Narada Muni had, you can read it in 6th canto, he gave them a brilliant exposition of the allegory. Was it 24 elements of, he told them an allegory, very extraordinary. But to those who lack the knowledge, they think you're just artificially endeavoring. But there's nothing about artificial when you have knowledge and you're applying that knowledge. So we were talking about how you read in Srimad Bhagavatam, these great personalities, they recognize, before I accept the throne, before I accept the governmental post, first let me perform austerities, get myself together. And then after their tenure, after their position, they're finished with it. They go and perform more austerities. So austerities at the beginning, austerities at the end. Sounds too much, doesn't it? You think, look, to enjoy, you just get into it. We have a very primitive, prehistoric, dinosaur age concept of happiness. So what more about Swayambhuva? There are some interesting points, of course, in the purport, that how people throughout the kings, in Western history, they threw out the kings because they said, why should, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. One person cannot have all the power. And of course, the kings, you read the history of England or France or Germany, the kings were exploiting. So the people said, out with the king, out with the monarch, bring in democracy, power to the people. But as Prabhupada's predicting, as what's happening in the world now, democracy is failing in terms of being able to keep people focused on material goals, according to the satisfaction of those who want to control society. Democracy means you manipulate the people based on sense gratification. But that's failing in terms of keeping the people together for materialistic purposes. So now the thought is, especially with IT, it's so easy to control people. You can have a autocracy, you can have a dictatorship without the people even knowing it, because the people are so lost in their screens. Just control the screens, control what's on the screen, the content, and you control the people. Any first-class materialistic demoniac person can easily figure this out. You ever look out the window? You can go to the window at the Bhakti Lounge, the front window, look out how the people are walking on the street. What are half of them doing? Yeah, as they're walking. So you want to control society? You just control the content on the screens. Give the men heaps of pornography, make them weak, spaced out. Give the women heaps of options for consumer goods, and make everyone work for it. So Prabhupada writes, now by the laws of nature, the time is coming when dictatorship will put the citizens into more and more difficulty. If the king or dictator individually or the members of the government collectively cannot maintain the state or kingdom according to the rules of Manu Samhita, certainly their government will not endure. Well, everyone knows governments don't endure for century after century. You expect that. There's going to be change. Things will be overturned. Systems will change. Everyone expects that. But still, there's nothing else to do except what we know. We're going with what we know. But what we know is very little. So what else is Swayambhuva Manu doing? We'll find in the next verse. Sunandayam Varsha Shatam Pundaikena Bhavam Sprisham Tapyamanas Tapo Goram Idam Anvaha Bharata. O scion of Bharata, after Swayambhuva Manu had thus entered the forest with his wife, he stood on one leg on the bank of the river Sunanda. And in this way, with only one leg touching the earth, he performed great austerities for 100 years. While performing these austerities, he spoke as follows. So is anyone asking you to stand on one leg for 100 years? All you're being asked to do is chant Hare Krishna, take prasad, read some books, engage your senses in the service of the master of the senses. But we can't do that. It's too difficult. I was just thinking today, what is it that a community like the Bhakti Lounge community is offering? You might wonder sometimes, what's in it for you? It's offering devotional service. Oh. You say, but I want to be happy. I want to enjoy. Real happiness is devotional service. Instead of serving your body and mind and material conceptions, you're serving the master of the senses. You're serving Krishna, Rishikesh, the Lord of the senses. To have a chance to do devotional service is the rarest opportunity in existence. So don't be fooled by the simple circumstances. If you have an opportunity to do devotional service to Krishna, you have made it to the conclusion of the Vedas. You've made it to the 5th level of human existence. First is Dharma, ordinary religiosity. Artha, economic development based on Dharma. Third, Kama, sense gratification based on Dharma. And then finally, 4, liberation from material existence. But number 5, as Lord Chaitanya says, Prema Pumarto Mahan. The 5th level is acting for love of Krishna. So yes, we're supposed to be making progress to develop love of Krishna. Love of Krishna begins and ends with devotional service. That's all that's going on in the spiritual world, devotional service. So as you often point out, the more service you have, the more wealthy you are. So no one is asking you to stand on one leg for 100 years. This is not Satya Yuga, this is Kali Yuga. all we're being asked to do is chant Hare Krishna. And when you chant Hare Krishna, you are asking, please engage me in your service. You're asking Krishna, please engage me in your service. The more you chant with attention, the more you are open to service possibilities. So we'll go to text 9. Sri Manu Uvacha Yena Cheta Yate Vishvam Vishvam Cheta Yate Nayam Yojagati Shayane Smin Nayam Tam Veda Veda Sa. So Lord Manu is chanting prayers while he's standing on one leg for 100 years. In other words, he's not just standing on one leg. As if some kind of physical trick will bring about spiritual advancement. He's standing on one leg and chanting the prayers that you'll hear about in this chapter. Lord Manu said, the Supreme Living Being has created this material world of animation. It is not that he was created by this material world. When everything is silent, the Supreme Being stays awake as a witness. The living entity does not know him, but he knows everything. So, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that in the material condition of all living entities, there are 3 stages of dreaming. Number 1, when the material world is awake and put into working order at the time of the cosmic manifestation, when the universe is set into motion, so to speak. This is a dream, a waking dream. Similarly, when you wake up in the morning, that's the waking dream. The daydream, the waking dream. When the living entities go to sleep, they dream again. When the living entity, and when unconscious at the time of annihilation, cosmic annihilation, when this material world is unmanifested, living entities enter another stage of dreaming. Therefore, the conclusion, at any stage in the material world, therefore, they are all dreaming. So when we think we're awake, we're dreaming. I am this body, I am the mind. I want to be happy, I want to be satisfied. When you go to sleep at night, you're dreaming. And then, at the end of the cosmos, cosmic annihilation, you have a long dream merged in the body of Mahavishnu until the next creation starts. So there's 3 types of dreams. So Manu is pointing out that the Supreme Living Being has created this material world of animation. It is not that he was created by this material world. This is a very crucial point. Uninformed, ignorant persons may think you're just dealing with something that's a product of the material energy. But bhakti is distinct from the material world, distinct from the material energy. It's the activity of the spiritual world. So our only austerity, our main austerity we're being asked to do is chant Hare Krishna. Oh, so hard, no time. This is how unfortunate we are in this day and age. As stated earlier in the first canto, Bhagavatam, Manda Sumanda Mateo Manda Bhagya Hipadruta. We're lazy, unfortunate, and above all, our mind is always disturbed. That's Kali Yuga. Lazy about adopting spiritual methods for freeing ourselves from the grip of Maya and attaching ourselves to Krishna. We're lazy about it. We're very unfortunate in that our priorities are always scrambled. And above all, we're always disturbed and in anxiety. Meanwhile, we think there has been great human progress. So Swayambhuva Manu is pointing out that when everything is silent, the Supreme Being stays awake as a witness. The living entity does not know him, but he knows everything. So Manu is establishing the authoritative presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As an authority, he's one of the 12 Mahajanas. As an authority, he's speaking. Look, this is the way it is. But we have this blanket of ignorance covering us. I don't see any Manu. I don't feel any supreme authorities running my life. I don't want any cosmic chaperone. I'm me. You can notice in yourself the conditioned nature of wanting to act as if you're fully independent. There is no situation in which we'll ever be fully independent, spiritually or materially. People like to travel because I've got resources, I've got money, I've got my visas, I've got my tickets, my bookings. Away we go. You get a false sense of full independence. In material relationships, we get that false sense. Sky's the limit. You love me, I love you. Nothing can stop us. There is never a situation in which you're fully independent. It won't happen spiritually. You'll always be dependent on Krishna. And it will always happen materially. You'll be dependent on material nature. Constrained, restricted, limited. Only an idiot would think, I'm fully independent. But we're idiots. Just try to act in Wellington like you're fully independent. And that means disregard all the laws. Act in any way you like. You'll be locked up. But when it comes to thinking about our life, we think we're fully independent. I will do this, I will do that, and there'll be this, and there'll be that. I've got so many options, or I should have so many options. And then we get envious. That person has more options than me. I gotta do something about it. The more we see how limited we are and how restricted we are, the more realistic we are, the more we're ready to live a real life. So therefore, blinded by false independence, when Krishna says, you're my parts and parcels, surrender to me. Oh, how restricting. But when material nature knocks on your door and says, come interact with material sense objects. Oh, that looks so inviting. It's so exhilarating. When Krishna says, surrender to me, no, No, or not yet, or I already did that. Now I want something else. But when material nature comes and knocks on our door, surrender to me? Sure. This is our problem. So there needs to be a point in our life when we start begging Krishna for attachment. Because otherwise we'll be attached to material nature. And we'll start thinking that bhakti simply means battling with the desire for material attachment. When actually bhakti is about developing attachment for Krishna. Maybe some of you undergo that unnecessary tribulation of thinking bhakti is just about denying yourself. Denying material attachment. When the bhakti process is negative and positive together. Negative, yes, deny the material attachment. The positive, become attached spiritually. So the purpose of the 9 processes of bhakti is to develop spiritual attachment, which gradually turns into love of Krishna in all the different stages of love of Krishna. So we become attached to hearing about Krishna. We become attached to serving Krishna with our senses. So again, the purpose of the Bhakti Dance community, or any community like it, is devotional service. We're not a community of true believers. We are a community of servitors who love devotional service. And so much of are feeling indebted just because we have devotional service. So persons like Swayambhuva Manu reinforce this proper understanding. That's their service, that's their job. So he's letting you know there is a supreme being that stays awake as witness when everything else is silent. Sometimes people argue philosophically. If an apple falls from a tree in the forest and there's no one there to hear it, does that mean the apple actually fell? There's no one there to observe it falling. So that means, did it exist or did it not exist? But there's always a silent observer of everything. So tomorrow we'll discuss a verse by Swayambhuva Manu, which parallels a verse in Ishopanishad. It's almost the same verse. Atma vashamidam vishvam yat kinchid jagat yam jagat chena chaktena bunjata magrada kasyaswiddanam. Only the first line is different from Sri Ishopanishad. So I wonder how much we are ready to accept our limited independence. Our options are restricted. How much are we realistic about how life really works spiritually as well as materially? So Manu is letting you know this is how the real world works. Your options are limited. The goal of life is to revive your love of Krishna. I'm going to the forest with my wife. I've done my dash. I've done my executive post. He did austerities before he took up the post, and now he's doing austerities after. And what are our austerities? Chant Hare Krishna. engage in Krishna's service. All right, any questions?